If you told someone in 2012 that Gangnam Style was going viral and the FBI was still using paper files, they probably wouldn't believe you either. But it happened. Just like the fact that we used to wash cows, you've never actually seen your real face, and we test dinosaur intelligence by giving emus snacks. Want to know more? Well, I'm Mike with List 25, and these are 25 short facts that'll turn your life upside down. Did you know that while the rest of the world was already into social media and streaming by 2012, the FBI was still running on paper? Yep. They didn't move their case files online until that year, which, let's be honest, is a little embarrassing. I mean, you'd think a department tied so closely to national security would be ahead of the curve, but nope. The plan was to upgrade back in 2009 with a high-end digital case management system. It was supposed to be top of the line and cost $425 million, but the launch ran into major software issues, delays piled up, and they didn't get the system online until nearly 3 years later. Also, it ended up $26 million over budget. Either way, it's online now. And then there's the boat that vanished, and the second one that turned up full of bodies. Right around New Year's 2021, a 29-foot Mako Cuddy cabin with 20 people on board left Bimini and never made it here to Florida. It disappeared somewhere in the Bermuda Triangle, and despite a massive search effort that covered over 17,000 square miles, not a single clue ever surfaced. Then, 6 months later, a second boat drifted into Turks and Caicos with 20 bodies inside. No one knows where it came from, how it got there, or who the victims were. The boat wasn't registered locally, and authorities ruled out foul play. But again, no names were released. As of 2025, there's still no official link between the two, just 20 gone and 20 found. Then again, did you see the viral video of a humanoid robot going rogue in China in May of 2025? CCTV footage from a factory showed two workers trying to activate an AI-powered robot hanging from a small crane. The thing suddenly comes to life, flailing its arms, knocking over a computer, and then goes after the two men. They tried to get it under control, and it took one of them sneaking around the back and pulling the stand over it just to stop it. NVIDIA, the company behind the robot, insisted it was designed to help with boxes and customer service. You know, helpful stuff. But they also said these machines have degrees of freedom, and that their algorithms need to be carefully monitored. It was probably just a glitch, but it feels lacking somehow. Of course, if you're trying to get your own system running smoothly, we just found out that your breakfast routine might need a total rewrite too. According to research from the University of Waterloo, women tend to store fat more easily after a meal, but they also burn it faster during fasting periods. Men, on the other hand, well, we don't store fat as quickly, but our fat burning rate is slower overall. Based on that, researchers used mathematical models to suggest that women should lean into high-fat breakfasts, like omelets, avocados, maybe even full-fat yogurt. Us men, however, well, we get better metabolic results with carbs in the morning, like oatmeal or whole grains. So if you've been trying to share a healthy breakfast with your partner and wondering why only one of you is making progress, well, now you know. Meanwhile, on a slightly more illegal note, North Korea, in all probability, secretly flooded the world with fake $100 bills. In the early 90s, flawless fake bills started showing up everywhere across the US and overseas. So perfect that even trained bankers couldn't tell them apart from the real thing. These supernotes were made of the same cotton linen paper blend as actual currency, along with intaglio printing, embedded threads, and watermarks. After years of investigation, US intelligence eventually pointed the finger at North Korea. Their trail led to a shadowy division known as Office 39, a secretive agency that funds the regime through counterfeiting, drug trafficking, arms deals, and other illegal ops. Millions of dollars in fake bills slipped through global markets before the US finally redesigned the 100. North Korea still denies it, but no other culprit has been found. There's also the famous mathematician who decided the best way to find a wife was to crunch the numbers. Back in the 1600s, astronomer Johannes Kepler approached marriage the same way he approached the cosmos, with charts, calculations, and a step-by-step plan. He lined up 11 potential wives and spent 2 years weighing each one's pros and cons. The problem was that it took so long that some of them got fed up and dumped him for taking too long. But Kepler had unknowingly wandered into what we now call the optimal stopping problem, a math puzzle about how to choose the best option from a list without checking them at all. Mathematicians later figured out the answer. You reject the first 36.8% of the options, then choose the next best one after that. In Kepler's case, that meant choosing number 5, which, as it turns out, is exactly who he married. So the math checks out, even if the method was a bit questionable. On a completely different note, can you believe the Eiffel Tower was originally only supposed to be temporary? It sounds ridiculous now, but Gustav Eiffel's iconic 1889 structure was never meant to stick around. Built for the Paris World's Fair, the original plan was to tear it down by 1909. City officials weren't exactly sentimental about it either. The only reason it survived was because its height made it the perfect platform for military communications. During World War I, it intercepted enemy radio transmissions, warned of incoming Zeppelins, and helped coordinate troop movements. Then, in World War II, Hitler reportedly ordered it destroyed entirely. Thankfully, that never happened. So no, the Eiffel Tower wasn't spared for its elegance or cultural value. It was saved because it was tall, functional, and surprisingly handy in a crisis. Okay, we all know the nuclear waste problem hasn't been exactly solved. Still, pouring it down a giant hole in the earth might sound like something a child would come up with, but it's actually one of the current proposals on the table. Scientists have been floating the idea of drilling ultra-deep boreholes into the Earth's crust and just dropping radioactive waste in there since the 50s. Physicist Richard Muller and his daughter even launched a startup called Deep Isolation to make it happen. But while the pitch sounds futuristic, not everyone's convinced. Borehole disposal is expensive, untested, and almost impossible to monitor once the waste is in. One hole can cost over $2 million to drill, and the canisters need walls so thin they might crack or get stuck halfway down. And once it's in, there's no pulling it back up. So yes, it is a plan, just not a very comforting one. I should also mention that there was a time when Starbucks fans discovered a loophole so effective, it forced a complete rewrite of the company's reward system. In the 2010s, customers figured out that Starbucks tracked loyalty based on a person's number of transactions, not how much you spent. So people just started reloading something inexpensive, like a $5 gift card, with $1 30 times, either online or in store. That alone was enough to hit gold, which came with perks like free drinks and birthday rewards. The hack spread across Reddit and deal forums and eventually got big enough for Starbucks to notice. In 2016, they overhauled the system to focus on dollars spent instead, which was, good for them, but also kind of ruined the fun for the rest of us. Moving on. Kyoto University once dedicated over 600 hours of research to contagious urination. And I'm afraid to say, well, that's exactly what it was. Also called social urination, it's been observed across multiple species, including humans. To study its roots, researchers spent a frankly impressive amount of time watching chimpanzees relieve themselves in a zoo setting. Over 604 hours, or 25 straight days, they documented 1,328 urination events and discovered that chimps were more likely to pee if another chimp nearby was already going. Lower-ranked chimps were especially susceptible, often joining in when higher-ranking individuals started. The theory? This behavior might help strengthen social bonds or keep the group in sync during shared activities. Therefore, next time someone heads to the bathroom and you suddenly feel the urge to, well, don't worry. Technically, you are simply performing a socially driven urination event. You're welcome. Interestingly, if we stick to animals for a bit longer, it might sound silly, but the closest thing we have to testing dinosaur intelligence is watching emus solve snack puzzles. Yep, and we're doing it too. Emus, along with ostriches and other large flightless birds, are part of a lineage that traces back to dinosaurs. But unlike their crow and parrot cousins, emus don't exactly have a reputation for brain power. So, in their quest to find out what's actually going on upstairs, researchers built a rotating wheel that dispensed snacks when aligned properly, and tested how the birds handled it. And those emus figured it out almost every time, spinning the wheel correctly in 90% of trials. Ostriches, on the other hand, were a bit more hit or miss. It's not Jurassic Park, but it's probably the closest we'll ever get to watching a dinosaur use problem-solving skills in real time. If we head to space for a moment, the far side of the moon is hiding two canyons the size of the Grand Canyon, and they were created in less than 10 minutes. They're called Valles Schrödinger and Valles Planck, and they formed after a massive impact hit the lunar surface around 4 billion years ago. This was during the tail end of the solar system's bombardment period, when the Earth and Moon were getting pelted by leftover debris. The object that struck the Moon was moving at 35,000 miles an hour and released 130 times more energy than every nuclear weapon on Earth combined. It created a 200-mile wide basin and launched two streams of rock back into the sky, and when those came crashing down, they carved out the canyon in minutes. The best part? That blast may have exposed some of the oldest layers of the Moon's south pole, right where NASA's Artemis program is planning its next crewed mission. Not to be outdone by the Moon's dramatic past, Earth may have had its own set of rings that eventually rained down fiery death. During the Ordovician period, around 485 to 443 million years ago, life in Earth's oceans was booming. Plants were starting to spread across land, and the continents were slowly colliding into one another. But in the middle of all that growth, Earth may have been wearing a ring system, like Saturn's, just a lot more unstable. Scientists believe a single massive asteroid broke apart in orbit, forming a temporary ring. And then, in true Earth fashion, the whole thing collapsed. The debris rained down over time and left a concentrated band of impact craters around the equator. Basically, Earth tried the ring thing and got pelted for it. Putting space collisions aside for a moment, did you know modern food safety basically started with cows getting scrubbed down before milking in the 1890s? After Louis Pasteur's discoveries in germ theory, health officials in Paris turned their attention to the city's dairy farms. They found that cow hides, especially around the udders, were crawling with bacteria like Streptococcus and Mycobacterium bovis, which causes bovine tuberculosis. So in 1894, the city passed a rule. Every cow had to be washed with a mild disinfectant before the first morning milking. Farmers hated it. The brushes froze in winter, the carbolic acid damaged buckets, and nobody liked being up that early for a cow bath. But it worked. Tuberculosis cases linked to milk were nearly halved within 3 years. Sanitized farms got fancy certificates, milk carts advertised germ-free deliveries, and cafes charged more for the cleaner stuff. In the end, that one public health push helped spark milk pasteurization in the US and paved the way for the Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906. You know the band the Cranberries? The guys that gave us Zombie, Dreams, and basically set the tone for the whole 90s? Well, before they were the Cranberries, the band's name sounded a lot like cranberry sauce. In the early 1990s, they called themselves the Cranberry Saw Us, a deliberate pun that, when said quickly, sounds like something you'd hear at Thanksgiving dinner. They even released a demo EP under that name. The switch to the Cranberries happened by accident. A record company returned one of their demo tapes addressed to the Cranberries, and, well, the band just sort of went with it. Zombie. Speaking of accidents, a groom in Indonesia showed up at the wrong wedding and almost married the wrong woman. On April 4th, 2021, a man arrived at what he thought was his engagement ceremony in Magelang, Central Java, but it wasn't his. It was someone else's. Thanks to a Google Maps misdirection, he and his wedding party wandered into a completely unrelated home ceremony, and the bride, Ulfa, didn't notice anything was off. Her fiancé's party was running late, so when the groom and guests arrived with gifts, she assumed the delay was over. It wasn't until a photographer showed her a photo of the man and his family that she realized, well, she didn't recognize any of them. The mix-up was cleared up quickly, and the groom's party left to find his actual bride. Alright, let's go back to 1816, when people genuinely believed the sun was about to die. That year, known as the Year Without a Summer, followed the most powerful volcanic eruption in recorded history. Mount Tambora launched so much ash into the atmosphere that sunlight dimmed everywhere around the world. Crops failed, and temperatures plunged. But in late June, things took a stranger turn. An Italian astronomer claimed that sunspots, the dark patches on the sun's surface, were a sign that it would go dark and set the Earth on fire by July 18th. People lost it. A woman in Somerset became catatonic. Churches across Europe overflowed. People in Belgium mistook a cavalry charge for the trumpets of Revelation. Even the Shakers in the US stockpiled grain for the coming apocalypse. The day came and went, of course. Believers then switched to the Julian calendar, claiming Doomsday would hit on July 29th, and, well, we're still here. Still, the idea of a total societal reset hasn't gone away, and neither has the dream of escaping it all by living off the grid, which doesn't mean what you think it does. The fantasy usually involves solar panels, fresh air, and no utility bills. But in most places, true off-grid living is either illegal, heavily regulated, or wildly expensive. In California, for example, homes with solar power are still required to stay connected to the grid for safety reasons. In Colorado, one couple needed a permit just to install a wood-fired generator. And even in remote states like Idaho or Arizona, living without the grid means dropping tens of thousands on battery banks, backup generators, and heating systems that work without gas or electric lines. A setup like a Tesla Powerwall? That's easily $20,000. Most off-grid homes you hear about are actually still tied to the grid, just with better branding. The next spot on today's list is dedicated to Coke's other mistake. The year was 1999, and Coca-Cola had a bright idea, building smart vending machines that could detect the outside temperature and adjust prices based on demand. Hot day, higher price. The logic was straight from the surge pricing playbook. And no, not that surge. The thirstier you were, the more you had to pay. But there was one problem. People weren't having it. You see, vending machines are tangible, punchable, and very much in reach. Customers either walked away or took out their frustration on the machines themselves. Between the public backlash and the maintenance issues, Coke pulled the plug before the idea ever became mainstream. The fact remains that even billion-dollar companies can't always make the math work, and that includes every single modern attempt to recreate ancient Damascus steel. These legendary blades, made from South Indian wood steel as early as the 3rd century BCE, had a reputation for being practically unbreakable while holding a razor-sharp edge. They were forged through a process involving trace elements, repeated folding, and precise thermal cycling. And despite modern metallurgists trying everything from laser-based additive manufacturing to ultra-controlled cooling, no one's nailed the exact recipe. Craftsmen, who left no written instructions, passed down the original technique. So now, with all our tech and science, we're still reverse engineering something a blacksmith pulled off 2,000 years ago with nothing but fire and instinct. And since I'm on the subject of things we used to be better at, well, let's talk about curiosity. College is supposed to expand your mind, but research suggests it's doing the opposite. A 2021 study from the University of Oklahoma found that students often lose their curiosity over the course of their degree, not because they're learning too much, but because they're taught to value performance over exploration. Grades became the goal, not understanding. You're rewarded for staying in the lines, sticking to the rubric, and echoing back the right answers. Curiosity, asking weird questions, following tangents, experimenting with ideas, starts feeling like a liability. Meaning, by the time you graduate, your sense of wonder could be running on fumes. Our curiosity isn't the only thing we take for granted. We're also a little too confident about what we're seeing. Most of the time, your brain's just filling in the blanks and hoping you don't notice. Your sharpest part of your vision is tiny, about the size of your thumbnail held at arm's length. Everything outside that zone is a blur, but your brain cleans it up with a mix of memory, context, and a decent amount of guesswork. There's even a small gap in each eye where the optic nerve connects to the retina that doesn't see anything, but your brain quietly covers it up, filling the space with whatever seems to make sense. So yeah, what you're looking at right now is mostly a guess in high definition. It's the same with what you think you look like. The fact of the matter is that you've never actually seen your own face. Ever. The version of you that you see in the mirror is flipped. Your left side becomes your right, and no one else ever sees you that way. And photos aren't any better. They're flat, distorted, and frozen in time. What you think you look like is just a weird mix of that moment's lighting and muscle memory. Only other people have ever seen the real you. Coming in at number 2 today, well, this one's kind of insane. The wings of a Boeing 787 were designed to bend over 26 feet. That's the height of a 2-story house. And that's exactly what they're designed to do. Their materials are made to twist under pressure like a giant springboard, so when turbulence hits, the wings roll with it instead of resisting. That bendiness also helps to smooth out the ride and make the plane more fuel efficient. In stress trials, they actually bend the wings way past anything you'd see mid-flight, and every time, they bounce back like nothing happened, which is good, I guess. And finally, I'm going to leave you with this disturbingly horrifying fact. Plants know when they're being eaten. Yep, they don't have brains, they don't have nerves. But when a caterpillar starts chewing on a leaf, that plant can pick up the vibrations and immediately start pumping out chemicals to defend itself. Some even tell their friends by releasing airborne warnings, giving them a chance to prepare their own defenses. And it's not just random, they actually tailor their response. Bugs get one chemical mix, fungi get another, which means the plant isn't just reacting, it knows exactly what's happening. So if you've been casually trimming your ficus, maybe take a second to realize, well, it probably didn't enjoy that. And it might be worth saying sorry. You know, just in case. And that's it for today. So, which one was your favorite? And did I leave out anything? Now before you go, here's a quick trivia test to strain your historical instincts. Washing cows in 1894, Paris helped kickstart what major policy? Was it A, the European Dairy Safety Accord, B, the Clean Farms Initiative, C, the Pure Food and Drug Act, or D, the International Pasteurization Standard? Think you've got it? Well, drop your answers in the comments below. Let's see it. And if you're in the mood for more, well, why don't you check out our related video, 100 Random Facts That'll Break Your Brain. It's got bizarre science, strange history, and facts so weird, they will feel made up. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe, ring that bell, and I'll see you again next time.